Good afternoon, and I'd like to welcome you to our second Walk Kansas webinar. And we're really pleased today to have Dr. Josh Carr with us. He's an assistant professor in the Department of Kinesiology at Kansas State University and also director of the Neuromuscular Physiology Laboratory. He earned his PhD in exercise physiology from the University of Oklahoma and has been a certified strength and conditioning specialist through the National Strength and Conditioning Association for over a decade. Also a recipient of the Big 12 Faculty Fellowship Award. Dr. Carr's research focuses on the adaptations to resistance training and developing interventions to restore and enhance neuromuscular function, all with the goal of improving health and performance across diverse populations. I know that resistance training is JC's passion, and we've had the pleasure of hearing him speak before, and you'll be delighted. So I want to just turn it over to JC. And if you have questions at any time, you can put them in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll certainly address questions at the end as well.
Well, thank you so much, Sherilyn. It is a pleasure to be here. I'm going to pull up my slides. Okay. We can see that okay, looking good. Okay. Okay, well, like I said, it's a pleasure to be here, and I really appreciate Sherilyn having such a passion for sharing health-related information and knowledge. So, and that's what I hope to do today with my talk, Walking Towards a Stronger Future. So what we're going to address today is really two key questions or two topics and problems that I'm hoping to address for you all. The first one is, why is muscle fitness, specifically muscle fitness, so important as we age? And the second is more of a how-to, a big picture overview of how can we improve muscle fitness. So let's get into that. So I realize my audience here, a bunch of people who hopefully enjoy walking. Walking is outstanding. It's great physical activity. It's good for the mind, the body, and the soul. And to no disrespect of this group or this program, what I'm going to show you on a couple of slides here, I do have some data. I'm going to walk us through it. I cannot get the physiologist or the scientist out of me. I have to show some data. But with no disrespect, what I'm hoping to show with some data is that walking is outstanding. It does improve longevity, but resistance training amplifies that response. Walking alone is not enough. It's just one tool in the toolbox. So what we're looking at here is a really big study in thousands of individuals. We have what's called mortality rate on the y-axis, and then we have steps per day. So what the study was trying to do was to look at the association between step count, how often you're walking or how much you're walking, and mortality. And what they found, and some of you may have heard this, 10,000 steps a day benchmark. So this study was also trying to address that that colloquialism that you've kind of heard. So step count is on the x-axis on this way. So what they found is that after about 8,000 steps in a day, there's diminishing returns. There's no significant change in the mortality rate. Those individuals who were not walking a lot, they do have a higher mortality rate. But individuals that are 8,000 and above have around the same mortality rate. So diminishing returns. 8,000 steps a day is about 3.5 miles, and it's about an hour to an hour 15 minutes of physical activity, which is great. But what I'm showing you in this next graph is that resistance training amplifies that protective effect of exercise and physical activity. I know this one's busier, and I'm sorry that it's a little bit grainy, but what we have here is on the y-axis, this is called a hazard ratio. The lower, the better. A hazard ratio of 1 means that you have the average life expectancy of the average U.S. adult matched to your demographics. And then with that, We have on the x-axis three groups of, or four groups technically, no resistance training, or excuse me, no physical activity, no leisurely physical activity. We have individuals that do a little bit, about 30 minutes of walking most days, some days of the week. Then we have a good amount of walkers. This is walking 45 to an hour on most days of the week over here. And then we have walkers, joggers, and runners. So people who do a lot of physical activity like running and walking. But each of these different bars reflects no weight training, 5 to 30 minutes of weight training a week, and then 1 to 2 hours, and then 2 or more hours a week. So these bars reflect resistance training, none to the most. What we can see here, there's a lot of things to tease out here, but what I'm really wanting to show you is that more physical activity, less mortality. Statistically, you're less likely to die of any cause with more activity. Remember, going down is a good thing. But in addition to that, my favorite part of this graph, full disclosure, I'm very biased. I think resistance training is a cure-all, so I'm very biased. But what I like about this graph is that adding in additional weight training furthers that response or furthers that protective effect of exercise. So adding in more resistance training lowers the any amount, 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes a week. You're seeing additional benefit with just a little bit of resistance training layered in to a relatively high volume physical activity, walking, jogging, running. So any amount of weight training is good. That is a great thing about exercise, specifically resistance training, is the dose response. You increase the dose, you get more response. And this wasn't a rather robust study, about 310,000 individuals of a wide range of age. Okay, so with that, why strength is so important? Why muscle fitness? I might use those terms synonymously in this talk. Why strength is so important is that what we know is that without a doubt, in this very basic graph, as we age, we lose strength. The ceiling starts to fall, and that's important and that's relevant because the higher the ceiling of your strength, the greater the difference between the most that you can do and the least that you can do. So we want this high ceiling, this high canopy. So that's strength. But even for walking, here we're seeing a graph that has for the world record. So very fit individuals for their respective age. We have age group on the x-axis, and then we have the 10-kilometer race walk time on the y-axis for both men and women. And what we see is that as we age, even if we are fit and active, we start to slow down. What I want to point to is that there's kind of this uptick in, 55, 60, 65. There's this exponential growth. But importantly, the middle age markers are also very predictive of long-term health and fitness as well. So across this continuum, the higher that we can increase that ceiling, that strength ceiling, the better. Most people think that it's all about, and understandably so, that it's about the size of the muscle that dictates its function. And that's understandable because structure largely dictates function. But there's something in this graph that I want to show you that's very, very important for supporting the rationale of resistance training. X-axis, we have age bracket, and on the y-axis, we have the percent change. So when we're 25, young, carefree, the world is ours, this is the reference point. So as we age, we are starting to lose strength in the lavender, but also muscle mass. We lose both. That happens. There's nothing we can do to prevent that. but exercise can help. And I'll get to that here in a couple slides. What I want to tease out of this graph very briefly is that this difference between mass and strength, this big difference as we are getting older, as we are aging, this big difference is due to an inability of the central nervous system to drive the muscle. So muscle is the motor, absolutely. But the central nervous system controls the muscle. The muscle is the puppet. It will only do what the central nervous system tells it to do. In order for that central nervous system to drive the muscle, that has to give a signal. That signal weakens as we age because of a variety of reasons, but one of which is we start to place less load on our body, on our system. Um, so the central nervous system isn't being driven as well to activate the muscle. So we need to train the central nervous system too. Well, how do we do that? We can pick up heavy things, and that's what we'll talk about in the second half of this talk. But this really supports the rationale for using weights as a way to increase the signal that's being delivered by the central nervous system. And again, I just want to emphasize that strength is vitality. This was a very, very large study in about 500,000 individuals that looked at the association between hand grip strength, just squeezing, a hand grip bulb or dynamometer, and mortality. And this was a worldwide study across countries. And again, hazard ratio here, we want that to be lower. If we enjoy living, which I think most of us do, we want that to be lower. That means you're less likely to die from all causes. So what they found is that individuals that have lower strength, so lower strength on the left for both men and women, you have a higher likelihood of dying from any cause. So strength is the pillar of vitality. To kind of go up another level to look at this from a bigger picture on a lifespan. As we age, we have the green line is kind of our maturation curve. Um, and the slope of this decline after the peak of our muscle fitness, which can range anywhere between 25 to 35 years of age. The students that I teach in my classes, which most of whom are 18 to 22, they're over here and they think it's going to keep going up. And when I show them a graph like this or a figure like this, they're like, no, that's the decline. That's not me. I'm going all the way up. But I remind them humbly, as I too was there at one point, that time catches up to us all. And so eventually we're going to cross this independence threshold. These are arbitrary, just illustrative. Here, this is when we can no longer support ourselves independently. We can't get our own groceries, grooming, things like this. We're dependent on a caretaker. And this is obviously going to be a major change of quality of life, of health span. And what if there's nothing else that can be taken from this talk today, I want you to understand that exercise at any point along this trajectory or along this curve improves the trajectory and gives you a buffer against that threshold. The longer that we can stay above this red line, the better our life is. The more that we can play with our loved ones, the more that we can enjoy this life that we have. Unfortunately, this trajectory will, unfortunately, we'll say it's fortunate. We'll take a glass half full approach. This trajectory is modifiable. We cannot stop aging, but we can modify its trajectory. But that trajectory can also go the wrong way. So let's say we have a catastrophe where we go on bed rest, we have a major injury, a major illness, something that just completely stops our physical activity, our ability to move. That's going to bring us closer to that independence threshold. But like I said, fortunately, this curve is modifiable. Even amidst that catastrophe, we can adapt. We can induce stressors, a stimulus, resistance training, most notably, that can help get back that functional gain and improve or give us more time above that threshold, that independence threshold. And to kind of summarize here on some of these things, leg strength, for instance, in these big studies, leg strength reduces the time that it takes you to stand from a chair, something that some of us take for granted. Um, it improves our walking speed. Individuals that have greater leg strength have a greater preferred walking speed, and they also have greater balance. Um, muscle, in addition to being a motor, is also a sensory organ. And what I mean by that is it's better at telling us where our body is in space. And this is incredibly important as we age. Falls can be catastrophic at midlife and older age. So we have better balance as well. To compare or to show you how important this is, um, this study here, this data, what I'm showing you is we have a really big group of masters athletes and a large group of healthy, just inactive controls. So people that are chronically weight training versus individuals who just don't really do much of anything. We have muscle power on the y-axis, and then we have age group on the x-axis. To no surprise, someone who is chronically weight training, it makes sense that they're more powerful. That's not really a big surprise. But when you actually look at what this means in comparing these individuals, it's not that resistance training, um, again, does not, chronic resistance training does not prevent age-related strength loss. We still see these similar slopes. We're going down, but that trajectory it is different. We have functional gain such that in here, and there was an 85-year-old man who was as powerful as an inactive 65-year-old man. And so this again is it gives you health span. It allows you to do the things that you want to do. In that same study, they took some advanced um, medical imaging. They took an MRI of the thigh muscles of some of these individuals, and here this was in a sub experiment. There was a 26-year-old, and here's a really good cross section. It looks none of us are radiologists, or maybe some of us are. I'm not, but this looks a little bit better, we'll say, than the 71-year-old thigh here. And when I give this talk, I sometimes ask people to guess how old this MRI scan this person of this MRI scan is. What do you guess? What do you guess? Um, this was a 69-year-old masters athlete. So this was in the study, and you can just see that this individual, although only 3 years difference or two, excuse me, 2 years difference from their 71-year-old counterpart, it looks much closer to that healthy 26-year-old thigh. So this is the rationale. This is the data that I'm trying to convince you that weight training is a wonderful therapeutic that can improve your ability to move through the world. So this second half of this talk, I'm really going to talk at a high level of how we can improve muscle fitness. I want to start with a video. It's about 3 minutes. You may have seen it before. It goes viral every so often around Christmas time. Um, and without a single line of text, this video encapsulates everything possible about behavior change as it relates to weightlifting. So I'm going to see if this plays. We might have a couple of technical difficulties. This. Are we okay with that? Let me see. Okay. So that video, it always gets me. And there's so much. I've watched that dozens of times. There's so much to take away from that. The challenge of behavior change, overcoming societal impressions, self-doubt, but also if you notice the goal setting. Why are you doing this? The time that it took. That first time he picked up that old dusty kettlebell, he couldn't do a single one. It took time as well. It took a pattern. And so they're just, I love that video. It's just so it is on, it hits exactly how challenging it is to change your behavior. When we getting into the second part of this talk, how can we improve muscle fitness? We know it's important now. How do we do it? Um, what is the purpose of resistance training? Like, what are we wanting to do with resistance training? Um, Depending on who you ask, we'll get a lot of different answers. Some people just want to look better, weight loss. They want to, they have a vacation coming up. Maybe they're going hiking. There's so many different reasons to do resistance training. But the purpose of resistance training here is within a session, you're trying to apply a stimulus that is challenging the body beyond what it is accustomed to. So you have to overload the body beyond what it's normally doing. You have to put tension and stress in the muscle. That in turn increases that neural drive from the central nervous system as well. This ultimately results in adaptations that across time enhance the ability to generate force and to support the movement patterns to be able, it increases the ceiling that allows you to do those movement patterns at an easier level. So we have a stimulus. If we apply that across time with appropriate recovery, we get an adaptation that ultimately will give us an improvement. Okay, that makes sense. What are we supposed to do? Well, the American College of Sports Medicine, as well as the CDC, there's, if we distill this down, there's two primary recommendations. We want to try to get around 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic activity each week, but we also importantly want to get about two resistance training sessions in a week of the major muscle groups. And this is what I'm focusing on. Okay, this will be the center point of what we're talking about. So let's break it down and let's keep it simple. Keep it simple. Ideally, in an ideal world, we want to do this 2 to 3 days a week, um, including 1 to 3 sets of 8 to 12 repetitions at moderate to high effort. Notice here, this says effort. This does not say, you need to be doing a bunch of 45-pound weights with a barbell. That's not the image. That's not what we're needing to do. We're not comparing ourselves to collegiate athletes, Olympians, bodybuilders, nothing like that. We're just trying to use effort because effort is that drive from the brain to the muscle. So 8 to 12 repetitions at that effort. Each week, we want to get around 8 to 10 exercises that target the major muscle groups. And I have a slide that'll show major muscle groups, but these are the big movements. So you're pushing, you're pulling, you're lifting. These you're able to support more load, but they also train more muscles at one time. And then it makes sense. Progressive overload over time. This makes sense. All of us in here would intuitively realize that if I use the same weight that I was using, 10 years ago that I'm using now, well, actually, I was using more weight 10 years ago. Let me use a different example. If I use the same weight, say a 5 pound, a 5 pound bicep curl, if I use that same weight for a year, I'm going to increase a little bit at first, but then we're going to plateau. We have to progressively overload over time. And there's a variety of ways to do that. And we're going to go over that as well. But big picture, this is the recommendation. It does not need to get much more complicated than this. So let's get a little bit more granular, sets and repetitions, just so we're all on the same page. An example here with body weight squats, a great exercise. We're going to do 2 sets of 12 repetitions. You start with your first set, you do your defined allotment of 12, and then you have a recovery interval. And then you start your second set and your defined allotment of 12. What I want to briefly mention here is that this recovery interval, this is another way to completely modify your training. You can have a longer session of recovery, allow full recovery, and go again. That is generally going to support a little bit more of a strength adaptation, but then you can decrease the recovery interval. And instead of maybe doing 3 to 5 minute recovery, you're doing 30 seconds to a minute and a half. You're still going to be breathing hard, but this can increase the metabolic stress, that burn that's in the muscle. This can increase that and also increase the cardiorespiratory demand. So you can get a really a complete workout that has both strength and a little bit of cardiorespiratory stress for a 2-for-1. And who doesn't love a good BOGO deal? And so that's kind of your volume topic there. What are those major muscle groups? When we have a table here, but so we have legs, back, chest, legs, you're lifting, you have your quads, your hamstring, your glutes, your calves, your back, your big muscles on your posterior, and then your pushing movements are when you're pushing something, you're training your pecs, but also your triceps, your extension muscles, and your shoulders. So these big movements that use a lot of muscle mass. That's what we should prioritize within a resistance training session is our big movements that use more muscle. If that's not sticking, this here, this little figure diagram here, a big muscle group or what's called a compound movement is going to use more than one joint. So in this deadlift example over here, not only is this individual working their thighs, their legs, but they're also working their hips. So there's two joints. We have the knee joint and the hip joint. And the reason these are important, in addition to recruiting more muscle, is they're strongly applicable to activities of daily living. I know when I try to pick up a big, a big haul of groceries, it's basically a deadlift. There's a replicated movement pattern here. And similarly with our upper body, if we're training the shoulder, but also the elbow, we're getting our pushing muscles, the upper pec, the shoulder, and the tricep, that again relate to functional movements, activities of daily living. I can't think of many activities of daily living that burn your shoulders more than changing a frustrating light bulb. So these have direct relevance to activities of daily living. We then go down to progressive overload. This is an incredibly important principle when you start resistance training. You start low and slow. That's kind of that's a mnemonic for um, lots of things, including a crock pot meal. But low and slow is how we want to start. But we have to progressively overload the system because we induced a stimulus. There was an adaptation that gives us our desired improvement. But unless that stimulus, we adapt to that stimulus. Our body does not like to be taken out of homeostasis, so it adapts with that stimulus. If that stimulus is staying the same, that adaptation is going to just keep it there. So the more we apply that stimulus, the more we'll adapt. This is not to be overcomplicated. There's three key ways that I would like to communicate progressive overload. We can increase the load, the amount of load that you're lifting. You can increase the volume. So you can, instead of doing one set of 10, you start to do two sets of 10, and then three. Once that gets a little bit easy, you can keep the same load, but change it up to two sets of 12. There's a variety of ways to do this. In addition to decreasing the recovery interval. This is going to be more of a metabolic stress. You're going to get more cardiorespiratory demand from this, and it's a great way to kind of get that 2-for-1, where we're getting gains in muscle function, but also cardiovascular capacity. I like to, when I talk about progressive overload, I always like to show this figure. This cartoon, although simple, illustrates one of the founding legends of progressive overload, Milo of Croton. The legend has it that he was an incredibly famous, undefeated wrestler. And in his early brilliance, um, he surmised that this baby calf, is going to get bigger every day. And if he picks it up every day, he too would get stronger every day. And that's how the fable tells us. But I like it because it drives it home as over time, slowly, we need to progressively increase that stimulus. And there's lots of ways to do that. So what is stopping us from resistance training? These are the most common barriers to this. Equipment, I don't know what to do. I'm afraid of getting injured. Not enough time. There's no gym nearby, or I'm already active. I already do lots of manual labor, field work. Here's a potential solution for each of these common problems. What I'm hoping to show in the next few slides is that you don't need equipment to increase a stress. There's a variety of ways that you can do at-home equipment-free exercises. It does not need to be complicated. What you like to do, just keep doing that. Fear of injury, as long as you're using appropriate form, um, the risk of injury with weightlifting is is low, It's the most common injuries with weightlifting are because intensity was too high prematurely. Not enough time. Anything is better than nothing. No gym nearby, no resources. We can do this at home. And so most barriers here are really about your access, confidence, and overall instructional clarity, not motivation. So if you are motivated to start that change or to continue, there are solutions, there are workarounds. So I have a few at-home options here that I've drawn up. So let's say you don't have any equipment, no worries here. What we're going to try to do in that case is leverage gravity. We're trying to use gravity against us. Gravity is a force, so we can use it to our advantage in a resistance training type of movement. So, for example, a squat, you can do sit to stand from a chair. Quickly, slowly, there's a lot of different ways to do it. You can do wall push-ups or counter push-ups or just regular push-ups. There's ways to pull. This one is a bit tricky, and I don't really love those at-home pull-up bars or even the towel row. I'm scared of equipment that's not designed to hold a lot of weight. So pulling is a bit more challenging, but the hinge movements for your hips, you can do hip thrusts or bridge holds, planks, quadruped exercises, and then those grocery carries into the home. There's ways that you can leverage gravity to increase tension on the muscle. Let's say you're interested in starting and you don't want to invest a lot of resources into that early. There are so many things that you can do with a simple kettlebell. I have, and these things are indestructible, basically. There's kettlebells that have been around for hundreds of years. Those dumbbells, those are also pretty bulletproof. The bands are a great idea. The only thing here is that they do age. They're rubbery, so they will start to crack and break. But there's simple ways that you can do this as well with low resources. You can mimic those squatting movements, those rowing movements, those pressing movements. It really you don't need a lot of resources to leverage tension on the muscle, and that's really all we're trying to do is leverage tension and progressively increase that tension. And so um, there's also a few options for community-based or instructional options. So community-based options here in Kansas, the Stay Strong, Stay Healthy program is an outstanding program with demonstrated success and adherence in long-term retention. It's a great program that I'm hoping to become more and more a part of. There's also Enhanced Fitness that's offered in several counties in Kansas. This one, again, is tailored for older adults, and it's led by the YMCA. That's a 16-week program that's also getting pretty popular. There are some great online instructional resources as well. This program, it's HasFit. Heart and Soul Fitness is what this means. Completely free online fitness platform that gives you custom workouts or templates. It's a great place to start if you're just not sure of how to get started. There's also Darby. This one is very similar, but it's these plans or these routines that are generic and customizable. Another great access tool to provide some instruction and some guidance. Um, that is one thing is we don't want to overplan or analyze so much that we're in a state of paralysis by overanalysis. But when we start that day, like when we're walking the night before, or the week before, or 4 weeks before, if we have a plan, if we have a to-do list, it's so much easier mentally to step into that room and start. There's you just like a to-do list at work or whatever, the crossing things off, it just builds momentum. So that plan, however simple it is, it's nice to have someone help you with that at the beginning, and I completely relate to that. So before you get started with the resistance training program, or as you're continuing in your program, I have a few simple reminders for you to do and consider and to avoid. So, in terms of behavior change, a great approach is to train your identity. If you shift from somewhat like a mindset of, I just want to, I saw this presentation, I want to be as strong as I can, um, that will get you started. But if you kind of flip that to, I'm someone who resistance trains, that is going to help you longer with your maintenance and adherence. Secondly, consistency is better than anything. So um, show up even if it's not perfect, even if you're not feeling motivated or whatever it is, or you're fatigued, got a bad night of sleep. Still be consistent. Consistency is better than intensity, and anything is better than nothing. Make it easy to start. So we have fuel and we have friction. Friction, self-doubt, all those things. Um, Removing that can increase the push towards. So, your gears visible, you planned, I have 20 minutes Monday morning, I'm doing this. Minimize your distractions and just um, show up. Do not do this. Do not do this. Don't punish your body. I think some people are guilty of this. I know some old school strength coaches are, um, and even myself, after a big Thanksgiving meal or a big Christmas meal or whatever it is, we think we have to earn that treat. Exercise should not be a penalty or a penance for eating. Train because you can, not because you have to. We have this, it's a gift to be able to do, to perform resistance training. Don't get lost in the details, that analysis by paralysis. Plan less and just move more. Basics and consistency. Don't wait for your motivation. Motivation does fade. Goal setting, we that video we saw that sweet little image of that man's granddaughter. Um, that's a great tool, but having a system, on this day at this time, this is what I do. And to help you kind of drive home this point of overanalysis. I'm sorry if you cannot read this. This was something I drew up really quick. So, exercise prescription. This is what this stands for, exercise prescription. The first question we need to ask is, what are we trying to improve? What are we trying to improve? That video showed a great example. That man was trying to improve his ability to pick up his granddaughter so she could place that top ornament. We then use an exercise that replicates those patterns that we're trying to get improved. So that exercise, is it painful? No. Okay. Is it too hard? No. Is it too easy? No. Then it's a good exercise. If any of these flag as yes, if any of these flag as yes, we can change the load, we can change the intensity, we can change the movement, and we can change the rest. So this simple written example, this is a summary for how to get started. Just do something. Anything is better than nothing. So, questions that we answered today. Why is muscle fitness so important as we age? Well, greater levels of fitness increase the difference between the most that you can do and the least that you can do. That is your functional reserve. You want that to be, you want as much as possible there. How can we improve muscle fitness? We gradually and slowly increase that stimulus that we're placing on our muscles, gradually and slowly, low and slow. And I just love this picture because we have an older woman that was a professional gymnast, and at her age, still able to do that. So absolutely incredible. A few take-home messages here. Strength training is healthcare. I believe that. I wear shirts that say that. And the fact that the some insurance companies will cover your gym membership is proof that or support for this message. We're stronger together. What I mean here is that um, a community that helps you adhere to your goals, a training partner, someone that you can rely on, um, it will improve your adherence and your enjoyment in this process. And then lastly, people who are more fit are harder to kill. And that's just a fact. And to help remember that, fit people are hard to kill from our old school movie. Um, that is all that I have for this talk, and I would love if there are any questions. I wanted to leave a little bit of time for questions, and I'm happy to take any. And if you enjoyed this or you would like to kind of ask a more specific question, please feel free to shoot me an email. And these slides should be available as a PDF. Eventually, I'll work on with Sherilyn on that.
Yeah, so we will have a recording of this session that will be posted as well for you to have another listen, another look, or to share with your teammates. But do we have any questions right now or for JC? Lots of kudos coming up in the chat. While you're thinking of questions, he mentioned the Stay Strong, Stay Healthy program. So if you may be in a county or community in Kansas where this is offered through K-State Research and Extension. So we also have a website with a bit more information, or you can just Google, do a search for Stay Strong, Stay Healthy Kansas, K-State Research and Extension. So there might be class going on in your community, and they're happening year round. So hopefully there is one near you. It's a great program. Any questions for JC? Yes, lots of good information. I like how you talked about strength training enhancing what they do with walking and how each one supports and actually benefits the other. And
Yes.
I know that for myself that I go on and off with, as a lot of people do, you kind of fall off the wagon for a while, maybe because of life situations. You're not doing as much activity, either cardio or the strengthening exercises. But I find that when I get back to it, it's amazing. It's just like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better when I do this. And it's just an instant. I can get into that groove really easily again. Once you've sort of established a bit of I got to a point where you realize how helpful it is and how good you feel. And then it's sort of like the minute I go back to it, I'm like, yeah, this is why I do it.
Right, right. Yeah, I think that's so relatable. As I was sharing with you, I've been weight training, resistance training, barbell weight training since I was 10. And then I was one of those students who thought, no, I'll continue on this trajectory, that my trajectory is not going to decline at, at 20. And then, I have a couple of children, and all of a sudden I look up and I haven't touched a weight in 6 months. And it's hard to get back into it, but the one of the things is um, having laid the tracks previously. So even if you start for a while, then you get off, you already laid so many tracks, so to speak, physiologically within your body, that it is easier to start back up and regain what you have. So it's never too late. And I think so many people can relate to life events, work, holidays. Um,
Yeah.
so anything is better than nothing.
There is a question about how do you keep from getting bored? So she exercises for a while and then gets bored with it. So do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, yeah. So with monotony, um, it kind of depends on the individual, but with monotony, a way to do that or a way to combat monotony is is to mix up the workout every workout. Some people get really tired of doing the same thing, and others they only want to do the same three exercises for their entire life. There's no right or wrong way to approach this. So one way to break up monotony is to just do different versions of those movements. So instead of doing, you know, a body weight squat, you could do lunges, you could do step ups, you could do more functional movements where you're squatting and then pressing overhead. So mixing up the variety of exercises is great. You can kind of gamify it with competitions with a friend or a workout partner. So like fun loving competitions are another great way, or competitions with yourself. Um, things like that. That's what comes to mind there. Um, and having a workout partner is nice to chat with or something like that.
And there's another comment about we could use a list of online resources for lightweight training, yoga, chair yoga, and Tai Chi and walking. Yeah, we can work on that. And perhaps JC has some suggestions too. We've had in the past from Walk Kansas, when we redid our website, we didn't transfer over all of the videos that we had done on some just basic weight training and resistance training exercises, but they're still good. I mean, they've been around a while. I have a different hairstyle, but but there are still, some of those don't change a whole lot. So I might see about pulling some of those up again.
Yeah, and um, those references. Let me see here. Um, I have no conflicts of interest to report, by the way, so I have no benefit here. But this HasFit, oh, excuse me, um, this HasFit and this Darby, I think it's literally hasfit.com and darby.com. These are those online acts, these are those online platforms that have just a plethora of examples and tutorials and how-tos. So these would be, in my opinion, are great online resources for weight training with or without equipment.
Great. I will also put some of those in the Walk Kansas portal too, is a good place to add some of those. All right. Any other questions before we conclude today? All right. JC, thank you so much. And we appreciate your time today and your expertise and the motivation. And it's just really helpful, and hope everybody out there is having a good Walk Kansas so far. We're just clicking along. It's going to be the halfway point here, pretty soon. So
Well, outstanding. No, it's a pleasure to be here, Sharon. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you for championing this cause. You obviously care about your fellow Kansans, and I appreciate you increasing or trying to show them avenues for increasing their livelihood.
yeah, it benefits all of us.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you.
Of course. See ya.
Oh, good. Marsha's hitting the gym now. Woohoo.